big in-state football game at the Rock this Saturday to kick off the season between Alcorn State and Southern Miss. So I thought it a perfect time to bring in the voice of Alcorn State athletics for the past 32 years, the man himself, Charles Edmond. And Charles, how are you doing today?
Hey, man, how are you? It's time to play some football.
Yes, it is, man. July and that August, it's a little long. You smell that football grass, man. We're ready for it. And it's awesome to have Alcorn in town. It should be a big crowd. And Charles, you've been a part of Alcorn State for a long time. What does Alcorn State mean to you?
Oh, man, Alcorn means everything to me. Alcorn took a chance on a tall, skinny, goofy kid from St. Louis, Missouri, 2 weeks out of college. Alcorn hired me 2 weeks out of school. As a matter of fact, my interview for the position was the day after I graduated. So I graduated from Grambling State University. So after graduation, while everybody was high-fiving and celebrating, I was a little bit, but I had to get to Natchez because that's where my family stayed, get ready for my interview at Alcorn. So Alcorn took a chance on me, and trust me, they took a chance because as we all know, Alcorn and Grambling are big rivals. And back in those days, you had the old time guys, the late Marino Castles and the late Rat McGowans, who were Alcorn true and blue. And yet Alcorn took a chance on hiring a Grambling guy. And some of those old coaches back then said, there's no way Alcorn should have hired a Grambling guy to call their games. And trust me, they made me aware of that for the first 10 years that I was there. And so, I mean, of course, things thawed out after that, but trust me, the university took a chance on me then, and I'm very grateful to be a part of something special. Just the sports landscape. We've been through a lot of coaches and ADs and a lot of players. And Steve McNair, when you think of Alcorn, you think of Steve McNair, the late Steve McNair. And, Steve McNair and I arrived at the same time in 91. A lot of people might not know the first game in his freshman year didn't start, but quarterback got hurt. And that game was, we played Grambling in Shreveport. It was a yearly game in Shreveport that we played Grambling. And Steve came in and the rest was history. I mean, you could just see his ascend from the minute he stepped onto the field, beat Grambling. I think the next week we played Alabama A&M at the Cotton Bowl. And just, you could tell we had something special. And once he got to his junior year, the Heisman hype was on. And those last 2 years, 93 and 94, it's something I had never seen before as a 23-year-old, all the media types. So Alcorn's been a special place. There's been a lot of special players and coaches, administrators, just blessed to continue to have this opportunity.
Oh, great right there. And I'm somebody, we talked off air before we started talking. Steve McNair should have won that Heisman Trophy.
Oh, absolutely.
Am I wrong? I think a lot of people say
No, two championships in 4 years, broke the record against Southern University, our big rival. And his last game against Youngstown State, he threw for 588 on one leg. If that didn't seal the deal, I don't know what would have. But just, his heroics, just taking it, putting the team on his back. I mean, you don't see quarterbacks like that these days. I mean, in these schemes that we're in today, Steve was as tough as nails. Just so many great things when you talk about Steve McNair and what he did on the football field. Had $1 million smile. Of course, his brother Fred's the head coach, and we talk about it quite often, as a matter of fact. So it just brings back a lot of memories.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's royalty right there in the state of Mississippi, the McNair name. So, Fred coaching is a big old deal. So to see McNair on the sidelines, pretty awesome for the Southern Miss fans this Saturday. And speaking of which, kicking off the season against Southern Miss, it's a pretty cool game. Mid-State kicking it off. What's that mean to the fan base for you guys and the football players?
Well, there's a lot of talk on social media. There's a lot of chatter back and forth, as you know, and it goes left-leaning and right-leaning, sometimes a little bit too far one way or the other. Hey, fans are fans, right? The Braves fans are going to be there in full force. Southern Miss fans are going to be there in full force. And, it's just a great opportunity, I think, and to play these games in state. We played USM a few times. We played Mississippi State a couple of times. We have not played Ole Miss. We'll play them in 27. But just to have these games in the state, I think is great for everybody involved. Hattiesburg is not a great distance from many of our fans. Hotels have been booked in Hattiesburg for some time, from my understanding. So it's just great to start that out. But I will caution people, though, that this is not the same USM team that I think some people, not all, some think this is the same old USM team that's gone 3-8, 4-7. No, sir. No, ma'am. This is not that team. They made it to a bowl game. Good coach, very humble coach. You've got Frank Gordon Jr. there, and you've got a Clemson QB that's a transfer that's going to sling it around. So this, USM is on the ascend. So we better come ready to play. I think we will. Our band will be there. Our fans will be there. Our team will be there. And I think it'll be a great atmosphere at the Rock.
Oh, yeah. And you hit on the name right there, Frank Gore Jr. for us. But you guys have a stud running back of your own, Jarvion Howard, arguably the best running back in the SWAC. If you ask me, Syracuse transfer, newcomer of the year last year. I mean, talk about him a little bit more in depth and what challenges he brings for that Southern Miss defense.
Well, I didn't know much about Jarvion Howard. Our offensive coordinator, Elliott Ratton, I met with him last June. And that's just kind of our, break interview that we do to kind of get an idea of the personnel. And he said, there's this kid that's going to tote the mail for us, and Jarvion Howard, and I'm just going to tell you, he's something special. And when I met him, you could tell he was going to be something special in terms of just his persona. And then his first game against Stephen F. last year, just off the charts, almost 300 yards rushing. I mean, he is a bulldozer. He is a man. And it's going to take more than one Golden Eagle to wrap him up for sure. He had 250 carries last year, which was way too much. So we're going to, diversify our running game a little bit. But Jarvion Howard's going to is going to tote the mail come Saturday. And, USM better get a hat on a hat and try to make some things happen. But I think Jarvion Howard's a great kid. At Media Day, we missed 2 days of conditioning in the summer with Media Day last month, and he was ready to get back on campus. That's just, he was ready to get back in the lab, as he told me. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how Jarvion Howard in that running game stacks up against a pretty stingy USM defense that can get after the quarterback.
No doubt. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. Two running backs that are really good at their positions. And you hit on something, too. I mean, the game's going to be great, but there aren't many better bands in America than the marching band at Alcorn State, Dynamite. So give me a little teaser of what we could expect halftime show. Are you keeping it secret?
I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it close to the vest for right now. I'm gonna keep it close to the vest. But I tell you, it's and the one thing about the bands, for us, for SWAC and for HBCUs, is that there's a lot at stake in these band halftime shows. As we know, the Celebration Bowl is played in December, the winner of the SWAC versus the winner of the MEAC. And not only is that game important, it's going to be a battle of the bands there as well. There's a big time prize at stake, and bands are going to be rated and polled just like college football teams are. So every band in HBCU, including the Sounds of Dynamite, got to bring it every week because they're going to be ranked, they're going to be polled. The band directors are part of the committee. So the Sounds of Dynamite has to really bring their A plus game to Hattiesburg, and I think they will.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about Alcorn State being in town. People don't leave at halftime to go get drinks and food. I mean, you stay and watch the show, and I'm looking forward to a great show at halftime for sure. And like we said, this is an in-state battle. I love it. Keep it in-state as much as we can. And in the SWAC, you all have an awesome rivalry in Jackson State, the Soul Bowl. Are you have your eye on that, or are you keeping focused on game one?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Alcorn Jackson State rivalry will take care of itself. I mean, you don't have to sell that. You don't have to hype that. You don't have to pump it up. The game sells itself. And if you talk to old-time alums about that game, we won the division title and was playing for a championship many times, and we lost to Jackson State a couple of times. And some of our old alums, they hated that loss so much, they really didn't worry about the SWAC championship game because all they wanted was Jackson State. So there's never too early of a time to talk about Alcorn Jackson State. But for Charles Edmond, I'll let that game play out, and we'll see what happens. Jackson made their first shot. They beat South Carolina State in the MEAC SWAC Challenge. So we'll see what happens on Sunday when Jackson plays FAMU. That's going to be a big test. But clearly, Alcorn Jackson State, that takes care of itself.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, it's a big games on the schedule for you this year, obviously. And real quick, Southern Miss ties from 2012 to 2015. Your head football coach was Jay Hobson, who became the head football coach at Southern Miss. How was it working with Coach Hobson? Because a lot of people in Mississippi really like the guy.
Yeah, and he was loved here. Jay Hobson was hired his first year. He was hired on Memorial Day. Now that's late for hiring a college football coach. He was hired on the president's steps in front of his house, and people were wondering like, how are we going to put this thing together? And he was hired on Memorial Day. Well, we were right in the division hunt then, and from that second year on, it was all gravy. Jay Hobson was loved. He was loved here. Success, great success. He hired Fred McNair as his quarterback's coach, and so people still do talk about those days. But Hop was Hop, man. I mean, he brought it. He'd give you a little and he talked to you, but when it came down to game day, he was focused and ready to go. And he really improved the football program that at the time was kind of on the other end of it, but he definitely put it on the map, and Coach McNair's taking that baton.
Oh, heck yeah. We got him right after you. He beat Kentucky in his first game with Southern Miss. So that was a big old win. So we saw what Coach Hobson could do back then. And getting back on the SWAC a little bit, its current status and the future of the SWAC. Do you like where things are headed? Because we're in this Sun Belt and we're definitely excited where things are headed. What do you see in the future of the SWAC?
I think the SWAC is on the up and up. I mean, I think our commissioner, Dr. Charles McClellan, has done a very, very good job in trying to maximize the SWAC and maximize exposure with the TV rights and the media rights and with social media. What Coach Sanders did at Jackson State and elevating Jackson State as well as the SWAC. Some people will push back on that, but I think clearly, what he did was something special in a very short period of time, including the COVID year. But the SWAC is on its way up. We've added, of course, 2 new members in Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M. That's been nothing but a godsend for the SWAC, and those 2 programs are really good. FAMU is going to be really good, and Bethune-Cookman's improving. So the SWAC is right there. The SWAC is much improved. I've been a part of this league since 1986, and I can't remember a time in which so many people are excited about the SWAC and the direction that it's going in. Whether you like SWAC football or HBCU football, of course, members of the SWAC left the MEAC, and now the MEAC is down to a handful of teams. So if you like HBCUs and HBCU football, the MEAC is quite different, but I think they'll bounce back. But the SWAC has got positive momentum, and Dr. McClellan and the presidents and chancellors and ADs going to make sure the conference continues on that upward trajectory.
Oh, fantastic message right there. And you on a personal level, calling games for as long as you have with Alcorn State. I mean, when it is a first game at a place like Southern Miss, a big in-state game coming up, do you have a little bit more pep in your step to call the game? You got a little bit more oomph to learn a little bit more about the game? I mean, does it do it for you like the players?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nervous time. I've got my depth charts right here, working on those. But it's for broadcasters, it's kind of knocking the dust off. And I do high school football too, Vicksburg High, and so I'll be leaving Vicksburg, coming down at Hattiesburg Friday night. But when you're doing football, it takes a little bit of work to get in that rhythm. So that first game, you're kind of stuttering and stammering along because there's no preseason in college football like it is in the NFL. You can work the bugs out. You got the scrimmages, you could do something with that, but it's not quite the same. So yeah, for me, it's always the butterflies for that first game, trying to make sure everything is right and trying to make sure I'm right. And so it never gets old. It never gets old. Like I said, John Cox has been doing it 40 years. Guys, I'm kind of the second tier. You got Kellum at Ole Miss over 40, you got Mississippi State over 40. I'm 30 plus. So I'm trying to hang in here, not getting any younger. The game's getting faster, a lot more to deal with, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
And you hit on a name right there. I mean, John Cox is our longtime voice of the Golden Eagles. You're the longtime voice of Alcorn State. You two do have great history together. If you don't mind sharing a story or two about you and John.
Well, I mean, look, John is very professional, and anything you need from John, you pick up the phone, you call him, hey, what do you need? He'll make sure. And the one thing about John, like me, I learned that from him, he's kind of hands-on and making sure that the visiting radio crew is taken care of. Oftentimes you don't see that. John makes sure that your setup is right, make sure you got everything you need. I kind of learned that from John. And so that, one of the things he, very simple, very simplistic thing, we kind of share stories about equipment. And, I leave, sometimes I'll set up my stuff the day before and just leave it. And John says, well, what you need to do is you need to unplug everything when you leave it. And I'm like, well, nothing's going to happen to it if you just turn it off and you leave it plugged up. He said, you never know, you got something plugged in and a circuit might blow or something and boom. And he's right. And that happened one time, by the way. I left something plugged up and we had a surge. Can't remember where it was, but we had a surge and my equipment got damaged. So John Cox hit the nail on the head. So every time, I'll probably set it up early Saturday. When I'm done, I'm going to unplug everything. Unplug the socket from the wall, make sure that we don't have any issues. But he hit the nail on the head. That's the one thing John Cox taught me. Very simplistic, but very effective.
Oh, man, I love that. That's a great story right there. Sometimes the little things are the most important, obviously, right there. Doing play-by-play, I mean, what do you enjoy most about doing it?
Just calling the action and just calling the ebbs and flows of it and just trying to give these student athletes, the shine that they deserve. We talked about Steve McNair and Donald Driver, another Alcorn product, played for the Packers. Just giving these student athletes, it's we're just the storytellers, but it really is about these athletes because they put in so much work, and you want them to shine as best as possible. Even the coaches, you want to give them the love and the shine that they deserve because they're putting in the hard work, putting in the game plan. So I love calling the games. I just love being out there, love being in the press box. I mean, football is football. I mean, you have to love it. And, for me, I do football, basketball, baseball, softball. And so when football starts, time really speeds along to me. And that's what makes it fun, too, because the calendar year flies by starting Saturday. Before you know it, we'll be, taking turkey out of the oven and putting up a Christmas tree. Before you know it, the year's over. So that's what makes doing play-by-play fun. Time goes by and just giving the student athletes the shine that they deserve.
Oh, great message right there. And Charles, as we're kind of wrapping things up, what's a message you have for the Alcorn State fans out there?
Go Braves. Be hydrated. Dress cool. Go Braves. That's my message. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. The last time we were there, the place was packed. And Roberts Stadium is a pretty good place to play. I've been there quite a few times. It's going to be a great atmosphere. I think the weather is not going to be quite as torrid in terms of the heat, and so I think it'll be very tolerable. And I look, when you have two schools, 2.5 hours away, we're playing up. I mean, if you want to break it down, we're opening the season by playing up. And Alcorn's going to get a paycheck out of it, which is good. Of course, they want the paycheck and the W, which is even better. And, for USM, it's about, building the momentum and carrying the momentum from last year's team. I mean, this is not the same, USM team. Coach Hall's done a good job. I've been following him all summer. His message is very tempered. I think he realizes that, hey, it's a lot more work to do. For us, we got a lot of work to do. When you have these two teams that are trying to, elevate, I think it's going to be a really good football game. So I anticipate that. When we play, I've seen many of these games, FBS versus FCS. That's what we've got. The little things matter. Can't afford to turn the football over in your own, on your side of the 50. You got to cover special teams. You got to tackle, momentum when you're playing a game like this. And you've seen these scores, how it gets away from you really quickly. Not saying it's going to happen Saturday, but we got to slow this thing down a little bit. Let our running game do the work. Let Tyler Macon, who's a Mizzou transfer, he'll start on Saturday. It's a lot of anticipation. Now, I tell you what, you talk about Steve McNair, right? The anticipate. We knew about Steve before he took his first snap. We knew that Steve was going to be something special, just a matter of when he was going to play. Well, Tyler Macon is getting a lot of love as well. I can't think of a quarterback that has gotten the hype that Tyler Macon has received. He was with Mizzou last year, and that team almost beat Georgia, defending national champs, 26-22. So Tyler Macon has played some big time football on the FBS level. So when you get that type of hype, he's a true dual threat quarterback, and that's the system we run. And he's looked great in camp. Slinging it around and his speed and get out in space and move the pocket. I think if Tyler Macon settles in, if our running game settles in, if our defense settles in early, I think we could be in for a football game. And I think that's what Braves fans are looking for.
You struck up something in my head, too. The quarterback position is so important. We had that stability there in 2 years. And a quick X's and O you just brought in my head, too. Are you guys going to be a little bit more pass-heavy this year? Because y'all were a little run-heavy last year. Give me all the secrets. With what you just said.
Yeah, I do think we're going to probably, Braves football has always been about running the football. We're going to pound the rock. And there's we've had tremendous backs throughout the last 10, 12 years. Arnold Walker, DeLance Turner, Jarvion Howard. We're going to run the football. And then you add a running quarterback to that dynamic that just gives you something else to look at, to something else to scheme. So I think that's the one thing. We're going to run the football. And if we can do that, take time off the clock, keep USM's defense on the field, keep our defense off the field. The 3 and outs, I've seen these things happen. I hope it doesn't happen that way, but we got to be able to slow the game down a little bit, keep USM off balance. Their defense is stingy now. They can get after the quarterback, one of the top teams in the country in sacks. So they're very hawkish. They can get after you. So we've got a lot of things to work on with that as well. But I do think if we slow the game down a little bit, take what's there, avoid the self-inflicted mistakes, I think we could be in for a really entertaining football game.
Oh, yeah, and I tried to get it out of you. So y'all were changing a little bit more to the pass when relating your new quarterback to Steve McNair. I'm like, y'all changing ways a little bit, breaking away from the run-heavy offense. But Charles, I'm looking forward to a fun weekend. Not just for 4 quarters, a halftime show. We should play Alcorn every year. I've said that on Twitter. It is just a blast. So it's a big crowd. So can't thank you enough for being on today.
Thank you, man. Have a good one. I appreciate it.
No doubt. And hopefully see you at the Rock.